Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Colleen Benelli here with Robyn Benelli and our guest, Jules Davis. So do you want to say hi, Jules?
Hello.
I'm so excited to talk with you today. We have so much to talk about.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, Jules, for all of you listening, Jules really has a lot of expertise in intuition as well as Reiki, of course, but intuition and mediumship also. So we're going to get into it. So first of all, I'm going to just take a minute to say that we are ReikiLifestyle.com. You can find us, our Reiki classes, all of our social media, our YouTube channel, podcast, etc. Everything is under Reiki Lifestyle and ReikiLifestyle.com. And so feel free to email us anytime. I think probably the one announcement I would have after this is we have upcoming Animal Reiki 1 and 2 and Animal Reiki Master classes. And then William Rand and I are teaching together on Mount Kurama in Japan in April. And I think there may still be a space or two in the master class. So if that's something that's been calling to you, go to reiki.org and look up the Japan class information or email me. Okay, so now let's introduce Jules and talk about the things that we talk about all the time. Jules and I have been working together for a lot of years prior to her joining the Licensed Reiki Master Teacher Program through the ICRT, and I was very blessed to get to mentor her through that program. And I got to learn so much from her equally. I think it's really more like mentoring each other. But also we really had kind of an instant resonance before that and getting to know each other. And now we're just blessed to be friends and colleagues and, probably lifetime friends. So I'm really excited to have her here. So Jules, or Julianna Davis, is a highly qualified and experienced professional psychic, medium, ICRT licensed, Usui Karuna and Animal Reiki Master. She is a master crystal healer, sound healer, medical intuitive, animal communicator, and she is the owner of Auralux in Redondo Beach, California. And her work has been featured on BuzzFeed, Ease, The Platinum Life, Super Deluxe, Mixed Makeup, LATV, and in Sunset Magazine. I didn't know all that part.
Being in LA helps. Yeah, thanks for that. It's a mouthful to introduce me. I know there's a lot of different qualifications there, but it's fun.
Well, and truthfully, I can say about you that you are experienced in each of these areas. It's not like you kind of sort of know something about them. You really are experienced and have a lot of knowledge and skill as well. So, well, let me just mention your website, or we'll forget to do it. Her website is healingwithjules.com. healingwithjules.com.
And Jules is Jules.
Yeah, thank you. And then her social media is at Medium Jules, and for Instagram and TikTok. And so Jules, I think I'm actually just going to go ahead and turn it over to you now and let you finish any introductions, but also start with your story.
Okay. Well, I think you covered all of the, the different things that I do for a living, which is pretty awesome and fun. I get excited to go to work every day And, just working with people's spirit communicators, working with people on every aspect of healing, plant, animal, human, is what I do for a living, which is pretty exciting and fun and awesome. So that's when I started my business. I wasn't sure initially what the name of my business would be. And I just knew I wanted to help people heal. So that's where the Healing with Jules came from. So my business is going to be 10 years old, actually, officially. I started doing sessions 10 years ago. So I'm in my 10-year anniversary. And I started Auralux, which is my business here in Redondo Beach, in 2013. But I had been having experiences and healing in my own way for probably my whole life, really. I feel like, I was born on this earth to help other people. And so from a very young age, I was having a lot of different kinds of experiences, meaning psychic experiences, mediumistic experiences. I would have a lot of dreams that were precognitive, meaning I could dream about something and then it would come to be. And for many years, that really scared me because I didn't understand it. And I was really lucky to be, I know now, I was really lucky to be raised in a household where my mom had these abilities and my dad even has these abilities, and they were both quite open about it. I joke that I was raised by Hindus or Bujus because we were a Jewish family who went to yoga retreats every summer. And, my mom took us to psychics and astrologers and mediums, and I got to experience all of those things very young. So in that sense, I'm super blessed because it was never something that was discouraged, but I still didn't fully understand it in myself. So it took me a long time to start to appreciate it, I guess I'll say, and understand how to work with it instead of being scared. As a little girl, I would like hide under the covers at night because I was having all these mediumistic experiences and I never wanted to be alone because that was when spirit was a lot more active and communicating with me. And so I'd always, cry for somebody to sleep with me. Or as I got older, I had like a million stuffed animals that I would cover my face with. When I was in my early 20s, I got a couple of dogs, and my sister said that those were my new like stuffed animals, and I was just scared. I just didn't know how to embrace the abilities that I had. And then in 2007, my mother passed away. And I feel like it heightened even more my abilities, my senses. Like now her powers were coming into my powers. My mom was a natural medium and also a healer in her own right, and a crystal lover and all that kind of stuff. So I felt like it just increased my awareness. So I was having a lot of experiences with her. And then, even more experiences. At the time, I was a bartender in Los Angeles. And I think I just took all of these, random stray spirits home with me. I didn't really know how to cleanse my energy or be in touch with all of that stuff. I was such an empath. I was feeling everything. And it just got louder and louder and louder. So finally I was like, okay, I have to like figure out what's going on with me. And I decided to take a class in intuitive development. And it was just so incredible how like the teacher would give us an exercise and I could do it. I was like, oh, I could do that. I could tune into their heart chakra and experience them and just get all this information about them or whatever was happening. But that teacher didn't teach mediumship. And it was just, I really felt a calling to develop my mediumship abilities. So I was looking and kept finding more like intuitive development and stuff like that. And I had had a really bad car accident and in 2010, like pretty severe. I had very major spinal injuries and I was looking for ways to heal my body. And I kept hearing Reiki. And so I was like, okay, Reiki's going to help me. And I don't know how, but I have to learn it. So my mom was somebody who introduced me to Reiki when she was still here in the physical realm. She was receiving Reiki treatments from a friend of hers and from some other people when she was going through her cancer treatment process. And she had told me at that time, my mom was very psychic and intuitive. And she's like, you need Reiki, you need to heal your stuff, And so it just came into my consciousness. I need to learn Reiki that's going to help me heal. And I had been diagnosed with quite severe injuries in multiple levels of my spine. So I had a major surgery on my cervical spine because they had to decompress my spinal cord. I have 3 artificial discs in my cervical spine. And before and after the surgery, I received Reiki. And even I was in Spain, and just so happened that there was this, fair going on nearby to where I was staying. And there were multiple tents with Reiki practitioners and crystals and all this stuff. And so I just hopped from tent to tent and got Reiki over there. And I came back and I continued to work with the Reiki practitioner that I had been working with here. And it took me a while to figure out who I was going to study with the first time. I was like back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I finally took my first Reiki class, and it was an Usui Tibetan Reiki level 1 class. And I was like, this is, this feels so good. I was so excited about it. I could feel the energy right away. And so I had already been taking a lot of intuitive development classes. And then I took the Reiki training. And so when I was doing Reiki sessions on people, I would get all this information. And I was like, could tell them their life story. Basically, all the pains and traumas they had been through just came magnified in my energy space. And so I was like, oh, well, I have all this information for you at the end of the session. And I didn't really know how to balance that or how to do a better job at that initially. So I would just tell him all of these like heavy things that I saw that they had been through. And they're like, whoa, yeah, that happened. But then I wasn't really like leaving them with any kind of upliftment. So I thought, well, I have to learn better how to receive this information. So I just kept I'm a eternal student. I want to always learn how to do things in the best possible way and constantly grow and expand my skill set. So I continued with different kinds of development processes and even different kinds of Reiki classes and crystal healing classes and shamanic studies and all these different kinds of classes, sound healing, because I just wanted to expand the way that I could help people. And it ended up landing me because the mediumship stuff was coming in as well. Like I would be aware of, your dad's here, and I would tell that to the person and they'd start crying. And I just wished that I had more to tell them. It's like it's such an emotional, you would touch somebody in such an emotional way. And that sometimes is enough to just say your person is here and they want to know that, they want you to know that. But I wanted to be able to interact and communicate. So I ended up finally finding some teachers to train me in mediumship, like way later on in my Reiki journey. And I quite extensively developed that skill so that I knew how to interact live, I guess we could say, not just I got this information and that's it, but I'm going to still communicate with them and see what else they want to tell you about. So I've done quite a bit of development, meaning for years I would do several full weeks, like all day, practicing of both psychic and mediumistic development. And I started to follow the guidance of the Reiki and how to integrate that into my Reiki sessions or to make them completely separate sessions too. So I do both, where I use my intuition and my psychic and my mediumistic abilities in a Reiki session. And then I also do readings separately from that. I could go on, but I'll stop there for now.
Colleen, you're on mute.
It's fascinating. And yeah, well, so then tell us about some of your Reiki journey, like where you went from Reiki 1 and your studies and now going through the licensed teacher program.
Yeah. So with Reiki, so I had that major surgery, and then I felt intuitively guided by the Reiki that I could heal my body, the rest of it, without having to have a second surgery that I was prescribed. And that did happen. And so I was like, yeah, this stuff is amazing. So I just kept learning. So I did Usui Tibetan level 1, 2, and master. Then I did what was called traditional Japanese Usui Reiki Ryoho, which was more in the lineage of the International House of Reiki. And then I had planned from the beginning, I didn't know why, but from the very beginning, I felt like I wanted to be a Karuna Reiki master. I didn't know anything about Karuna Reiki. I just knew I wanted to be a Karuna Reiki master. And the prerequisite was that you were an Usui Reiki master. So I was like, okay, I could do that. So I went through that training. And then I decided that I was going to do the Karuna Reiki master training with William Rand in 2013. And he was coming to Redondo Beach, which is where I live now, but didn't at the time. And I decided to take that class in 2013 before it became a Holy Fire Karuna Reiki master class. And then it became a Holy Fire Karuna Reiki master class. Didn't know what that was, but I was excited for it. And so I took the Holy Fire Karuna Reiki master class with William, and he was teaching us some stuff in that class. And I didn't know some of the things that he was talking about. I hadn't been taught those things. And I had such a powerful experience with the Holy Fire that I was like, I'm going to go back and take level 1, 2 and master again with Holy Fire. And he told me, you know, at the time he was quite social. We went out to dinners in the groups of the class at night. And he was like, you know, we need more licensed teachers. You should consider applying. So I was like, well, what does that require? So I went and I looked at the website, and you had to be a professional member of the Reiki Membership Association, and you had to be trained by a licensed teacher, which I hadn't had level 1, 2 and master yet with a licensed teacher. So I looked, and Laurel Gaia was in charge of the licensed Reiki Master Teacher Training Program. And I decided, well, I'd like to get to know her. And I was really conflicted. Do I go to Glastonbury and take the, you know, Reiki training over there? But William wasn't teaching level 1 and 2 classes really very often at all at that time. So he definitely wasn't teaching it in the UK, but Laurel had a 5-day Reiki Membership Association professional member upgrade in Sedona with her husband, Michael Baird. And I was like, okay, that's where I'm going to go. I've never been to Sedona. And I went there and I did a 5-day upgrade, which was crazy powerful and a lot, not only in Sedona, but with Laurel and Michael, and 5 days in a row of Reiki is super powerful. We had 1 day off in between, which I spent in nature with another student, and we were giving Reiki to everything, you know, and just totally in this experience. And I had all this healing happening, and a lot of downloads of information were coming into me during this training. And I was like, yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm going to be a licensed teacher. But then, you know, that was in 2015. And Laurel ended up having a stroke not long after I met her. And so things got put on hold. And there's just, you know, this pause in the progression of that for me for a few years until it came back around again that it was time. And Colleen and I were talking at a Reiki retreat in Sedona. And I was like, you're going to be my mentor. You will be. No, I'm just kidding. But I just felt so connected. We had so much stuff in common. There was all these things that really resonated with me. And I was very excited and, you know, to join the licensed teacher training program. And it was definitely something I wasn't expecting, all of the different things that came through that experience of being in the licensed teacher training program. There was a lot of healing that took place for me. There was a wonderful connection of friendship that I developed with Colleen, and that was really special and powerful for me. Like, there were just so many levels and layers of things happening, and every time you heal, I feel it just makes you a clearer channel for whatever source of healing you're connecting with, whether that's a spirit communicator or the Reiki energy. So that's really a brief synopsis. And you know, I never needed that second surgery on my lumbar spine, which is something that I can say as one of many, many stories in my own life of how Reiki has helped me to heal and continues to help heal different aspects of my life, my animals' lives. You know, one of my dogs went into remission from cancer just from Reiki and some holistic, you know, tinctures. My dog Lola now, she's going to be 16 on March 1st. And she had a little bit of a back spinal injury. She's got a long hair dachshund body. So she's got that long spine. And so she had some disc degeneration happening. And I just asked the divine animal kingdom to come in and work on her one night when I was really stressed about how she was doing. And the next day she could stand up again. She wasn't able to stand. And I took her to the vet and they're like, well, she's walking now. And I'm like, but she wasn't yesterday. And so just all the time and time again, I see how Reiki has healed and helped myself, which has inspired me to want to teach and help as many people as possible to learn how to use this tool. Because what I always say in my classes is we need more of us out there. We need more teachers, more practitioners, more people that just have the experience of Reiki and have a tool to heal themselves, whether or not they want to work with it in a professional way. So I'm constantly inspired by the energy just because I see how much it helps me and other people. And it's continued to evolve and grow and learn. And I've been on the Holy Fire train, I say, since 2014 when it came out. And every time there was an upgrade, I was like, oh, how did it get more powerful? Oh, it got more powerful. Oh, how did it get more powerful? Oh, it got more powerful. So thanks to you, Colleen, as well, for all the things that you do behind the scenes with all of that. I always talk about you in my classes because it is really important for people to know, I think, who's involved, with everything. And also just, I don't know, you've meant a lot to me on my journey. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, and you are now teaching both in person and online and hybrid classes in Redondo Beach.
Yeah, I teach in person and online hybrids for most every class that I teach, including now Animal Reiki, which is fun to have that option. And I also am starting to travel to teach now that we are opened up again. So, like last year, I did a pretty awesome class in the Redwood Forest in the Santa Cruz Mountains in Felton, California, right outside of Santa Cruz. And I'll be doing that again this year for a level 1 and 2 and a master class in June. And then I'm also starting to teach down in San Diego, and I'm going to be teaching in Denver and in London, and hopefully that will London, England, and I will continue to expand on that. My goal actually and my desire to be a licensed teacher was partially because I wanted to travel and teach because I love to travel. And I wanted to be able to be in more places, meeting more people. The irony actually about the whole COVID thing is that because I went online, I started connecting with people all over the world as well. So I expanded through the internet and meeting people. And now I have classes with people from all over the world, both Reiki and my psychic development classes and stuff like that, which is really cool.
Oh, I hadn't really thought about that part of it, that is one of the other positive results of the online Reiki and the expansion of communication
Yeah.
in all the different ways.
Yeah, it's really awesome, I think, just to bring people together from all over the world who are like-minded, because there might not, like in one of my development classes right now, I have somebody from Dubai. And I don't think there's probably people that are teaching a lot of this stuff over there, for example. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, I also love the story of your parents and watching that generational shift in more children today being born into families that have freedom like you did. And also that there are people like you, like us, that are teaching the skills and the methods of how to manage it. When you have intuitive abilities that there's nobody out there telling you what to do with it, or mediumship abilities and nobody's saying, here's what you do. And especially because some of these are put into a category of scary, in the movies we watch, it can be scary. So I know we're all really interested to hear about like some of the specific skills or experiences. I'm not sure exactly what to ask, whatever comes through, but about intuition and what people can learn about that. And the same thing with mediumship. and your psychic abilities, I guess. How, just talk a little bit about how you're actually teaching that. And I'm always thinking in terms of our listeners are loving the how to and how you use Reiki for these things too.
Yeah. On a side note, my goal is to help to teach children in the future, because I know how important that is for kids like me who were like, what do I do with all of this stuff? And so when kids have come into me with their parents and they have this sensitivity, I'm so excited that the parent is open to some conversation with their child. And I'm sure you guys can relate to that with your children/grandchildren that you're working with who have these sensitivities and abilities. I teach, for me and my experience, a lot of people have a natural sensitivity. Everybody has the ability to tap into intuition as human beings. And as soulful beings, we have an intuition and a sensitivity. Some of us are just born even more sensitive or have a natural sensitivity that's there. Some of us might need to learn how to tap into it, but it's there. So everybody, I could say unequivocally, has an intuitive ability and an intuitive sense. To me, when I use the word intuition, I know there's lots of different definitions of how that looks. To me, intuition encompasses all of the different experiences that we can have. Psychic level, meaning we're communicating with being somebody who is here in the physical realm, like I'm talking to you right now, Colleen, or I'm talking to my dog, or communicating with them, somebody that's physically here. Or on a mediumistic level, I would be speaking with somebody who has made a transition out of their physical body, but they're very much still alive. That's the way that I look at them. And so they're a soulful being who is not in a skin suit anymore. That could be an animal or a human, somebody who had a human experience. That could be spirit guides. That could be enlightened beings, some of them who've touched the earth and some of them who've maybe stayed in the soul or spirit realm. And so there's a communication that takes place through those processes. And I feel like I've been evolving my understanding of mediumship in the sense that some people say you're born a medium and that you have to be born a medium. I feel like everybody has the ability to sense spirit. And if you wanted to, because your loved ones hear you if you're communicating with them internally or externally after they've made a transition, I feel everybody can communicate with the spirit world. Some of us are just naturally a lot more sensitive or open to doing that. So those of us who are aware of spirit, sometimes that comes from birth. You have that knowing, like I did. Sometimes people have a traumatic or some kind of event that awakens that ability within them. It's really helpful to have a skilled teacher explain to you how to tap into it and understand it. That's my whole thing, is how to understand it. We don't always have to be carbon copies of each other. We don't have to experience the spirit world in the same way, but just to learn how to activate that communication so that you can continue to communicate. So it's not like, okay, I know there's somebody here. Okay, that's it, but like I have somebody here and this is what they want to say. And as I'm experiencing them, this is what I'm experiencing with them. That's what I always tell my students. I want to have an experience with the spirit. I want to feel them, see what they're seeing, smell, taste, hear, everything like I am them. And I believe that I'm a trance medium, which is somebody that blends very closely with the spirit world. So I've studied trance as part of my development process because I was very much drawn to it. But it's when there's such an overshadowing, like you could look at it as a soul to soul connection, or your auric field is blending with the auric field of the spirit communicator. and you're actually experiencing everything that they're experiencing, which can be scary for some people. They're like, I don't want to feel how they passed away, or I don't want to feel those things. To me, I feel like it's such a blessing and pretty incredible. I mean, I can do that on a psychic level too, but just to be able to have this experience with something that's non-tangible, not physical at all. And I could tell you what their personality is like, what they love to eat for breakfast sometimes, you know, the kind of music that's on, the food that they cooked or ate. And you know, how they passed, I think, is helpful for some people to get some peace or closure, or sometimes just it's helpful for somebody to recognize, yeah, that is my person who's in the spirit world. But it's not a really big part of it typically, unless there's some questions that are unanswered about how somebody passed away. But for me, it's just, you know, releasing any judgment. Sometimes people are like, I don't want to connect with people who have maybe passed in a uncomfortable way or something like that. And I say, if it brings healing, then it's important for us to be open to connecting and receiving that information. So I look at it as a healer. This is another modality that I use for healing, is this communication aspect. So I do what's called evidential mediumship, meaning I blend with the spirit and I'm aware of things about their life. And then I would tell you things that should be proving that they're still here, that they're here with me. So things about their life that would be recognizable to the person that I'm doing the reading for. Trance mediumship is and there's different kinds of trance where I might blend with the spirit world, and it would be a spirit guide of mine that's communicating and offering words of inspiration or guidance for somebody. There's also trance communication where I would blend with somebody who's passed or made that transition to the spirit world, and I am them. And that's kind of like my preference, you know, but I don't usually go into a deep state of trance because I'm doing more active mediumship and readings or demonstrations where I'm standing in front of a large group or an audience, and I'm connecting to people's loved ones there. And how it comes in a Reiki session is often I'm just aware. Sometimes their spirit guides are checking me out, like, oh, okay. Especially with people who are really spiritual. Sometimes their team is like on the lookout for them. Sometimes it is their loved ones who are coming in, and I'm just aware of them. And I'm not actively trying to communicate, just to be clear about that. When I'm doing Reiki, I want to be a channel of the Reiki energy, but sometimes that person needs to hear something from the spirit communicator. So I don't want to completely shut that down. I want to acknowledge them, but also say, today we're doing Reiki. And so, you know, if you have anything important to share with me, I'm happy to pass it along. And then I'm going to get back into my Reiki mode. Reiki is, you know, connecting with spiritual energy. So we're doing that already anyways when we're doing a Reiki session. It is spirit energy that we're channeling. So for me, it's different frequencies or different vibrations, and one's more passive. Reiki is more passive, where you're just being the channel, kind of more like trance mediumship, where you're being very passive, you're stepping out of the way. Active, or some people call it mental mediumship, the evidential stuff, you're a lot more actively involved in that process of communication. So it's a little bit different. I think I've answered a little bit of what you asked me to say.
A couple of kind of philosophical questions.
Uh-huh.
One question, and then I have a second part to it.
Sure.
One question is do you have, when people are coming to you for mediumship for loved ones, I think you called it more like active mediumship, that like don't come through because they've moved into the light or moved into maybe like a, you know, karmic reincarnation, like a different incarnation, and the philosophy behind that, like I'm just really interested in like that kind of space-time continuum and like how that all works from the mediumship perspective, in that like how does that work with reincarnate, because I have my own like thoughts around that, but like from a mediumship perspective, that's super fascinating. How does that, what are your perspectives and your experiences when it comes to like either incarnation or like somebody that has, like they've just gone so far into the light that they're not necessarily physical as physical?
I think that's a really great question because it's something that a lot of people are very curious about. And I just had a client last night who I did a mediumship reading for ask me a similar question. She's like, well, what if somebody gets reincarnated, or, can you still communicate with them? I feel like my experiences, I don't want to say opinions, my experiences with the spirit world are constantly evolving and my understanding is constantly evolving. So I don't like to make absolute statements anymore about anything
Yeah,
because
totally.
it's just, it might change and that's
Yeah,
okay.
it's
And it
infinite
might
and
evolve for
expansive.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
From what I'm saying now, my feeling about it, and of course, I feel like when we're having a human experience, we're a little bit limited by our human experience because if we were to know everything about the spirit world, we would be maybe confused about why we're here having a human experience or whatever. I don't know. But my feeling is that time is completely irrelevant and we're existing on multiple planes or multiple dimensions simultaneously, and that we could be potentially either reincarnating in a different plane of existence or in a different time continuum or whatever you want to look at, quantum physics and that kind of stuff, or or we take some time to be in spirit before we reincarnate again. So these are different things, and possibly both.
Yeah.
If we're looking at time in a linear way, that maybe it takes some time. In my personal experience, there's no, somebody could have passed 70 years ago or 150 years ago, and they could still come in to communicate with their family member here because there's still a connection on a spiritual level between those two individuals, and so they're not like going to go reincarnate and never come in again. The only time that, in my experience, the only time that maybe somebody isn't coming in to communicate, I felt, is where there's a lot of healing or there's a lot of grief that's still very present there. And maybe the person here usually isn't ready to communicate or ready to hear what the communicator has to say. Alternatively, it could be that the spirit is going through something and they're evolving and they're not ready to maybe own their stuff or come in and communicate in a way. So it's usually when there's a lot of healing, when somebody's gone out in a tragic way, sometimes when there's a responsibility for their passing or something like that. And maybe the person here doesn't want to hear about why or what happened. And maybe the person over there isn't ready to share those kinds of experiences. But I would say 99% of the time that person wants to come through. The other way you can look at it is that just like we have people that we connect with really easily and quickly, the spiritual beings sometimes connect with different mediums more easily.
Yeah.
So one medium might be able to be like, yeah, I totally recognize this. Oh, we're great friends. Let's communicate. And another person might be like, I don't know what that energy is. And so I'm not the right medium, like just on an energetic level. I've seen that because our life experiences can help us be more open to a spirit communicator. The less judgment we have, the easier it is for them to communicate through us. That's what my experience is with the spirit world. So, and also a medium who's saying, I don't want to get this, or I don't want to experience this, they're going to shut down the opportunity to communicate with somebody if they haven't the ability to open up themselves in that way.
Yeah, that's
That's
really
my
interesting because that's actually what I've been shown as well from this, like the spiritual and that space-time continuum thing, is that our comprehension of the infinite is, such from a human perspective. And like you said, time doesn't really exist. And so, or maybe it's a different plane. Like, how does that all work with the reincarnation? And kind of exactly how you explained it is the different ways that I've been shown that as well. So that's so fascinating because I was like, well, I have my thoughts and like what, I've experienced with it, but so fascinating to kind of hear that similar ideas from somebody who, I definitely can communicate with, spiritual, like souls that are no longer in the physical realm, but I'm obviously not like a medium and trained in the same way that you are. So Yeah, so that's really fun to hear that.
Yeah, we still have that connection to the spirit world. Maybe it's just a matter of learning how to evolve or develop it more,
Yeah.
Robyn,
Yeah.
because I know you have that ability if you wanted
Oh,
to
totally. Yeah. Like,
take it further.
I see it, definitely. It's just different, like, than, because, when I'm doing sessions and stuff, like, I also combine that with like journey techniques and some,
Mhm.
uh, kind of more introductory level mediumship. So I'm able to connect in with people who, if like somebody asks, or animals or things like that. But it's different than like being like a active medium, like you are, that is part of what your role is, and you're trained, and then obviously your natural abilities to it. But it's just slightly different, but it's just fun and
Yeah.
fun because it's like that, all of that, you know the philosophical things to hear around that. So, but I do
Yeah.
also love the idea that you were saying about the skill, because I'm one of those people that don't feel like I was born with the natural abilities like you were. And I always thought for the longest time, like I wouldn't be able to ever have access to any of this, that I wouldn't be able to communicate with somebody's loved ones that have passed or in the non-physical realm, or that I didn't have intuition, especially being Colleen's daughter, who is, so, and we talk about this in our classes all the time. And, also kind of, there's an unlearning process around this, um, that I always thought, well, with her being so artistic and right brained, and, that it comes easily to her, also the really natural proclivity to it, that um, that I didn't necessarily, it didn't look that way for me. And so the idea, and part of the thing that I know in our classes that we teach, in our next step classes that we teach, is that all of it is a skill that you can learn. And unlearning some of the things, how it also opens up. So it's like, even though now I've learned the skill, I'm also able to communicate like with my own intuition so much more. And I am a left brain linear thinker, and what my clairs, manifest are going to be a lot different than like Colleen's. And learning how that all works for me and like many of our students, we had one that had a perfect quote. It's like, it's such a relief that you don't have to be born with these abilities, that they're skills that you can learn, and that you can be taught. And that's just kind of like the baseline, right? That you can learn them, they can be taught, their skills, but then it opens up that whole natural side of it too, because we are all born with it. But at the same time, you have to learn the skills to like lift those layers that have made us feel like we're not there, or like that it's not there, like you said, the ones that are more sensitive versus the ones that aren't, and learning how that all works for us.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely am a left brain kind of type A personality, which Colleen could probably agree with.
Shocker.
What did you say?
I said shocker.
I am that. And I'll say, Robyn, for all of us who are that way, it's even more, I think, scary to surrender and get out of the way, because we like to be in control or keep things in order or organized and all that stuff. And for me, it's so liberating that this is one aspect of my life where I can just hand it over to whoever else wants to be. I'm still there. I'm still actively a part of the process, but all right, Reiki, you got it. All right, spirit, you got it. All right, intuition, let's just like open up and have this experience. And a lot of my development was getting out of my own way, of
Yeah.
not trying to make sense of everything, because that's what we naturally do, especially those of us who are more linear, left-brained, kind of organized. Not that Colleen's not organized, but there's just that type of
Fair
way
enough.
to see things.
Let's just be honest.
But simultaneously, I realized that a lot of my creativity comes through my intuition. I'm very visual. I've been clairvoyant my whole life. I have a photographic memory, so that is my visual ability. helps me through my creativity. So there's lots of different ways that it does, infiltrate different aspects of our normal kind of day-to-day interactions. I feel like, yeah, everybody can learn it, everybody can develop it. It's just a matter of getting out of our own way. And that goes for anybody who's taking the class. Sometimes who wants to develop, who wants to learn, who wants to grow in this way, is getting out of the way. That's what we talk about all the time in our Reiki classes. Let the Reiki do the work, get out of the way. And it sounds confusing to people because they're like, but I'm part of that process, right? If I get out of the way, then what happens? And it's not necessarily that we're not part of it, but we're allowing the energy to flow through us. We're allowing the spirit communicator to speak through us instead of trying to control it or force it or do other kinds of things around that. And I felt so excited the first ever mediumship class when I finally found one. This is how spirit works, as I was looking and looking and looking and couldn't find anything for years. And then I found this website that had the word, key search word like mediumship. It was in the website, and I found a website. Anyways, I didn't go for the first teacher that they had up there. There was nothing wrong with that teacher. She's a fabulous medium now. I know her, but I felt, like it wasn't quite right. So I didn't click on to pay for this class. And I went back a few weeks later because the nudge was just getting really loud. And the teacher that was coming over to teach was named Mavis Patilla, who actually made her transition to spirit last year. But she was a longtime teacher at the Arthur Findlay College, which is where I spent a lot of time developing in the United Kingdom. And some of the students that she had taught brought her over here to the United States to teach a workshop on the Queen Mary, which is a very active location to be taking a mediumship development class for your first time. There was like 50 plus students in the class. I think it was a 2-day maybe workshop that I did with her. And I'm like getting names and I'm thinking I'm hot stuff, and like, yeah, I'm getting all this stuff. But so she was a demonstrating medium, which means she got up in front of audiences. In the class, she was making people come up in front of the audience and do a demonstration. And I was so scared to do that. But she's like, you've paid your money, you should be getting up in front of the audience, because everybody was like, I don't want to get up there. And so I got up on the second day of class. I was just, something kind of pushed me up there, and I got up and I did a demonstration, and she is talking me through it because I was so nervous, standing in front of 50 plus people, didn't know how to demonstrate. It was my very first mediumship class. And she just stood behind me and she gave me some energy. And she said, I'm going to give you some power, love, and just, close your eyes, just do your thing. Who do you have there? And she just walked me through it. And I could feel the spirit communicator like working with me and directing me of the direction of the room. And it was just such an incredible experience. And so having somebody so loving and supportive to walk you through the experience was so helpful, and the teachers, I've had a variety of different kinds of teachers in my mediumship training, but having somebody that can be like, okay, what do you have? What's going on here? Let me tune in and see what you're communicating with. And she was like talking me through it because she could see, oh, you're too much in your clairvoyance. Go into your feeling now, and she was like telling me how to go through the steps and the process. And, I had no foundation of training before that. And, it was interesting because I ended up being in advanced classes after that. So I never really started from the basic steps. And so I have to remember that when I'm teaching of what is it like to first start communicating and having those experiences, what's taking place there, because I try not to throw people into the deep end too quickly, because I want them to have the foundations, the basics of those experiences. And so maybe Robyn, you'll come in and join me one time and I can have you just kind of have some basics of those experiences, and you'll take flight after that, of just feeling that like, okay, I feel more confident in how I can communicate now with them and have that go on.
So in that style that you're speaking of, and this is just how I imagine it looking. So you are in front of the audience, and then the spirits that want to come through for the audience members, they highlight and come in, and then you connect with that audience member, understanding, that that's who it's with, or you engage with them to see how that's with. Is it John Edwards or Jonathan Edwards?
John Edwards is an American medium. Yeah.
So anyway, I was just curious about your style. So what that looks like. And I know that you're saying there are varieties of, like, when you are in one role. I know I joined you for one of your psychic medium readings, and it was with an audience. So can you kind of describe your process there?
Yeah, that's called a demonstration of mediumship, meaning we're demonstrating to an audience mediumship. So essentially, the goal is to prove that life continues to exist beyond the physical death. That's somewhat of the philosophy behind demonstrating. And so we step onto the platform, they call it in the United Kingdom. And we're on the platform as a medium, and you can't prepare. It's not like preparing a speech or a presentation. You have absolutely no idea. I think we're all completely insane, those of us who do this work, because the only way that you can prepare is to learn how to trust the spirit world and how to communicate with them. But, there's all different variables that are happening simultaneously, because it's not like the spirit communicator is just standing next to you going, all right, Jules, go to the person in the red suit and tell them that you have their father here and blah, blah, blah. It's not quite as simple as that. It comes through your feeling, your vision, your hearing, your knowing, your smelling, tasting, whatever. You're having this whole experience, and then you have to verbalize it to the audience while you're still having the experience. And you have to figure out who it belongs to in the audience, because sometimes in an audience, even of 10 or 15, multiple people might resonate with the first few statements that you've made about the spirit communicator. So I've done a lot of training in this. My goal is to be able to go to direct. There's different styles of finding who the spirit communicator belongs to, but we connect with the spirit first. And then the spirit is meant to help us figure out who they belong to in the audience. So that might be where I had an experience in December where basically everybody in the room just went blurry, and the person who they belonged to was like the only one that was in my sights. That's how the spirit world let me know who I was with, and then I could go direct to them. And I said, I'm with you here. Other times you might throw it out to the audience, and then multiple people will raise their hands, and then you have to figure out who does it feel like I'm with, or who's taking the evidence and all of the information, and narrow that down. It's a whole art form and process, and something that I've had to study quite extensively in order to get the confidence to really do it. So that's called demonstration style in front of an audience. And I have no idea when I'm doing any reading what's coming out of my mouth, literally from moment to moment, but standing in front of an audience and being that naked and exposed is pretty wild. And then sometimes you're communicating, and you're like, I have this person, and they, passed from cancer. I remember this one reading I did, and she said, no, my dad didn't pass from cancer. He passed from a blood disease, leukemia. And I'm like, and so you're also trying not to get into your head, during the process of listening to what they're saying. You kind of listen, but you have to stay in the connection with the communicator the whole time, and not get dissuaded by anything of their yeses and nos, and just really trust your information. No, I know he has cancer. He's telling me, that kind of thing. And it's just an interesting, because you're dealing with a live audience direct, and in front of all these people. It's such a funny kind of experience that we do. So I think all of us who do that are completely mad and insane, because it's so crazy to be able to do that. But the healing that can come from it is really powerful. And that's what inspires all of us mediums who do that, to put ourselves out there in that way. Exposure, it's the most exposed feeling, is because the audience who's there somebody could be touched by that, whether or not they're actually getting the reading, to know, oh, the spirit world does exist. My son is still very much alive, or something like that. Maybe they didn't get the contact, but they leave there believing that the spirit world exists. So that's really what's been instilled in me, is how important demonstrating is, not just for the person you're communicating with in the spirit world or the person there in the audience, but the entire audience and the experience that they're having. Something that somebody might take away from that is very healing.
Well, and also in that takeaway for, I think a lot of what we are doing now as we are developing these practices into a more mainstream, normalized practice, or maybe in our own world, but normalized practice, I think it heals the collective belief as well in the possibilities. And you were talking earlier about how all people have these abilities. And one of the things that I've noticed with clients that have someone who pass over and feel like they've lost that communication with that loved one is most of the time because they don't understand their own intuition style, how it works for them if they're not clairvoyant. For instance, if they don't see it in pictures, but they have the knowing or the feeling, they don't understand how their intuition works. And a lot of times what I hear is people make agreements before someone has passed as to how the loved one who has passed will show up. And a couple things with that if the person waiting for them to show up doesn't understand their own intuition style, they can miss it. And also the showing up can happen when they're not looking. And so there's a misunderstanding. Like, I remember one example is someone said, well, I don't believe in any of it now because my mother told me that when she passed, she would rock the rocking chair. Well, a spirit on the other side having that ability, and the ability to do it when you're looking, and your ability to perceive it is the whole thing, I think, creates the challenge in the belief and in people's own individual experience of that.
I think what I would say to that is that we don't know what our experiences as a spirit is going to be like when we're still here in our human physical experience. And so making a promise about something is probably unreasonable because we might decide when we're in our spiritual form that that's not what we can do, or maybe we don't have the ability to physically move a rocking chair, but we're definitely there. We're coming to visit you in some other way. And I know that a lot of people go to mediums and they say, well, I'm only going to believe if she says this or he says this. And that's also really limiting your experience of that connection, or the quality of mediumship doesn't mean that they have to say this one thing. And that can be almost detrimental for the person who's physically here, but really detrimental for the spirit communicator who's there, excited to communicate with their loved one, and their loved one's, well, like, I don't believe it because you didn't say that. So that can happen on different levels, I think. But there is, like you said, I mean, we all have the ability to communicate with our loved ones. Sometimes we don't get feedback in a direct voice. They're not speaking to us in through direct voice, but they're speaking to us through, maybe you get into the car and the song starts playing right after you were talking to your loved one, and they're giving you a message through the stereo. Or maybe they're giving you a message through a person that you meet, and that person has the name of your parent. Or you look at the receipt and it has the name of your parent or loved one. There's all different ways that they're communicating with us, trying to get our attention. It's just whether or not we're paying attention, like you're saying. Are we open to that communication? Are we open to connecting with them? And then sometimes, yeah, it's amazing when they're like, blah, 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 blah. And now I'm seeing this. And they're like, oh my God, that's what I was waiting to hear, and that's exciting too. But I have seen people like sit in a very skeptical way and they're like not sure. I mean, I even had a client the other day, we weren't there for mediumship, but I felt her husband that was in spirit and he wanted to communicate with her, but she was there for a psychic reading and a healing session. And so I was like, okay, I'm just aware of him. So I want to acknowledge him because he wants to be acknowledged. And maybe in the future we'll do a mediumship reading. And she said, I didn't even believe in any of that. And then as part of my grief therapy with my psychiatrist, she encouraged me to go seek out a medium. And that really helped me to trust and know, because the evidence that she gave was, I felt him there. And that's like the goal as a medium for me, is to bring healing if that's needed, to connect people who haven't had the experience of direct connection, and also to make those people feel like they just got to spend time with their loved one again, whether it's a few minutes or an hour. We're having that experience. To me, the word medium is just like a tool that an artist use. We use a medium to draw or create. The medium is that tool that the spirit communicator is using in order to connect with their loved one in an objective way, because it's a little bit more difficult at times for us to connect objectively to our loved ones, because it's coming through our filters and our biases of experiences that we've had with them. And that's not necessarily wrong or bad, but to have somebody that doesn't know anything about you or your loved one start telling you about memories you've shared together and these experiences and their personality and jokes that you would make together or whatever, that is so powerful and so amazing. Like, you can't deny that the spirit world exists in those moments.
I had a funny one. We teach about, the clairsenses and the clairsalience, which is the clear smelling. And it's a little bit of one of my intuition styles, but it's not like my primary one or my strongest one. But the example that we give with that is like smelling the perfume that your grandmother used to wear.
Mhm.
Well, a while back, this was years ago, but my grandmother, for a couple of weeks, I was like, I've never been a smoker in my whole life. And I was like craving cigarettes.
Mm.
And like, oh my gosh, like I need to go get a pack of cigarettes and just like, it's going to be miserable, but like one puff off of one cigarette, like very, very strange for me. Very strange. Like I've never smoked. Then I'm in my mom's house because a whole long story about why I can't be at mine. And I was in this house where my Colleen caretook for my grandma in this house for like 7 years. And she's definitely present here. There's things that happen all the time. And so I'm in the middle of the living room and I'm like, I can smell cigarettes. Like the smell of the smoke, not like the gross smell, but like the smell of the smoke. And I'm like, I went outside to check if maybe one of the neighbors were smoking, this whole thing. And like nobody in the area was smoking. And it was like, there was almost like, you could almost see the waft of smoke in the living room. And so like we realized that this was her communicating with her in her own way. So we laugh about this story all the time because like we have these ideas of like, oh, we're going to smell her perfume and it's nice. And the best part about it is that my grandma would that she had such an irreverent sense of humor that would be totally what she would like send as a way that she would communicate, is like, I'm not the perfume, like you're gonna smell. She was a smoker for like 50 years. She was a smoker for forever. And until like basically the last few years of her life, it was definitely something that like we all identified with her, because like she would always have to like, go outside and smoke, and it was like a whole thing. And so we crack up all the time that like, oh, it's not like the sweet perfume idea that like, oh, it's so nice. It's like you're gonna crave cigarettes and you're gonna smell cigarettes. I just want to let you know that I'm here. So yeah,
That's
like
funny.
thinking about that, like if we had not had, the kind of that idea and that knowing that that was like a possibility, we would have probably never equated the two together, that it was like, this was obviously like her being here and communicating with us for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
a silly story.
No, it's great. It's like they want to get our
Yeah.
attention. They want us to know that they're around, and it's not like they're watching you and every kind of intimate thing that you're doing. They're not caring about that, but they're around, they're present, they're accessible. And if you want to speak with them through your thoughts or do something in honor of them, they are very much aware that you're doing those things. It's almost like an instantaneous connection back to them. And that doesn't mean that if you're communicating with your grandma, that Colleen can't have an experience with her simultaneously in her own way. Because I feel like we're almost ever present when we're in a spirit form. We can be having multiple experiences at the same time with different people, which is really cool. I've had some weird experiences of smells and tastes too, where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I needed to smell that.
Yeah, totally. I don't need to
But
crave
thanks for the
cigarettes. I'm good.
experience. Yeah, I asked for an experience, so thank
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
Like, I was raised in a very traditionally Jewish household, and I'm like, oh, I smell gefilte fish. Ooh.
Ooh.
Like on her breath, this
Yeah.
lady, and I was
Yeah,
like,
I could do without
reminds
that
me of
one.
my great aunt. Like,
Yeah.
and I was just like, okay, yeah, thanks, Spirit,
Yeah.
for that experience. But yeah, they can utilize all of our senses in order to connect with us. And then there's the claircognizance, the knowing, where you don't have an experience necessarily. You're not like feeling or seeing or hearing something, or smelling or tasting. It's just like you just know the information. And that can be more frightening for people too, because they're like, but I'm not having this big experience that you're talking about, so I don't know if I can trust that this information is coming through, which is really cool when that's working, because then you really have to just trust that the information that's coming out of your mouth is correct. And that can be scary for some people. I did want to mention, like when I'm doing Reiki, just to be clear, I'm not usually actively in a state where I'm connecting to my mediumistic abilities, but I'm open. So if that stuff comes through, then I am aware of it. I use more of my psychic abilities when I'm working in a Reiki session, if the Reiki session calls for that. So not always am I going to be like tuning in to try to dig up all of this stuff for people. But if somebody comes in and they have a health issue, or they have something going on where they really want to go deeper into the experience of healing, then I use my intuition to go in and ask, how can I help this person? Like, what's the root cause of this issue? Or how can we get to the bottom of this? What is creating this? Where in their timeline did something happen? Or sometimes it's, maybe a thought pattern that's blocking them from manifesting something in their life that we want to address. And often we don't always know what is affecting us, or we don't always see it clearly. Or we're like, well, that happened a long time ago. A lot of people say, well, that was a long time ago. And I'm like, well, it doesn't matter if it was 50 years ago. If it's still having an effect on your energy today, we need to address it and work on it. So those are different ways that I've developed techniques to use my intuition. And I feel like you and Colleen both have that skill as well, where you go deep in with people sometimes and you start to see and become aware of things that are in need of healing that maybe the person wouldn't be able to access on their own, or likely they wouldn't, or they know that it's there, but they're up here and the issue is actually down there.
Mhm.
And so what I've been talking about lately is like, well, for quite some time now, is we're like excavating layers too. So when we're healing, not all the healing always takes place over one session or one class, it's like a process. So as we go into the layers, maybe new things come into our awareness that need healing, which is why also a lot of people would benefit from multiple sessions in order to get to the bottom or the root cause of something. But sometimes I can go all the way back into this lifetime or something else, and I'm like, well, this is where I'm drawn. And sometimes I get a very clear picture of what happened, a traumatic event, a conversation, something that was very disappointing or life-changing that happened for the person. And sometimes it's more just, okay, I'm in this age and I know something's happened, but I'm not completely clear of every aspect. So I'm just going to tell you I'm at age 16 and let's go from there, and then we'll start to process it. And then stuff will come more into my consciousness, or I'll give them the feelings that I'm feeling. And sometimes I'll have a whole visual experience and see exactly what happened. And sometimes I just feel this is a time where things really shifted for you. And this is what I'm feeling around that. And so we go into that kind of stuff. Through my own health journey, which has been vast and varied, not just with my spinal injuries, but I've had a lot of other kinds of health issues. I became extremely interested in healing and the healing process and the way that the body works. And so I probably am more passionate about holistic health than anything else. Like that's what I read about constantly and have become very, very educated on that subject. Before I started with all the energy work, I was going to be a licensed holistic health practitioner, which is like a naturopath. And through all of those studies, my own experiences and my intuition, all of a sudden I was shown that I could do medical intuitive work. And as I got more confident in that, I started being able to go into somebody's body and scan them and start seeing what's going on with them. And I'm not a medical doctor, and I always make that clear to my people. And I know in Reiki classes, we're not allowed to diagnose anything. So I'm not diagnosing, but I am very aware of where there have been imbalances, issues, when something feels like it needs to be seen immediately by a doctor. And I would tell them, I would go recommend you go get this checked out. It's better to just be safe, and get a scan or whatever. Or when it feels like, okay, it's not scary, it's not an emergency, but this is something that I feel is having an effect on you right now. And I've helped people through that ability get diagnoses for cancer multiple times because I felt something going on in their body that was either being dismissed or ignored by their doctors. I've encouraged them to get second opinions on things where they were being dismissed or ignored by their doctors. A lot of times women get
stress.
Pardon? It's just stress. Yeah. It's just a women's issue. Just take a Tylenol or whatever and it will go away. Or sometimes they just didn't know something was going on, but they had a feeling and they didn't go to the doctor. And so I was like, you need to go get this checked out. And I've had, multiple thank you emails saying, thank you for making me go because this is what I found out. And so that's how I use my intuition in a session. It's multifaceted, but I can get really deep into the experience with people if we've negotiated that in advance. I always ask them, is it okay for me to tune into you in this way? Even in just a brief to me is a 1 hour Reiki session, and a brief session when I'm just doing a normal Reiki session, I'm going to become aware of things because I'm asking for the energy to guide me on where they need healing at the beginning. But I try to stay out of it as much as possible. And even when I'm doing letting the Reiki do the work instead of me like spending the whole time psychically evaluating them. But when I'm doing the psychic work with them, when I'm going deeper into those experiences, I might do that for the first 20 minutes, 30 minutes of a session. And then for the rest of the time, I'm doing Reiki and letting my intuition guide me on how they could be addressed or healed, but not like staying in that vibration, if that makes sense. Because I feel like I need to get out of the way at some point and make sure I'm just becoming a clear channel for the Reiki energy too. So it's working with me. I'm doing Reiki on them often when I'm blending with them and doing the psychic stuff, I'm still giving them Reiki, but then at some point I step out of the psychic part and just continue with the session as a Reiki healer or sound healer or psychic, that whatever. I just start separating a little bit from it.
So I think that's part of what we're talking about with skill also, because having all those discernments, self-awareness, am I letting Reiki flow through completely, and I'm completely just being the open channel? Am I engaging with my psychic abilities and your discernment with that? And then if you are working in mediumship or with others who have passed or spirit guides, because mediumship is also spirit guides, having that discernment, I think, is what's so helpful in the skill building.
Yeah.
And one of the questions that keeps popping into my head, and then I'd like you to also talk about your classes from that perspective of like what you're teaching, because you've really given quite a few different examples. And I think I thought the demonstrating mediumship was kind of part of the training of it all, and now I hear that's a specific style.
Yeah.
But one of the questions I think that shows up for a lot of people is understanding your own accuracy and confidence in your accuracy. So can you share a little bit about your process in that, and then also your process as a teacher, helping people to be confident?
Yeah.
And what, like, a little bit about the different classes you're teaching and how that builds that discernment.
Yeah. For me, the best thing is to practice, not with a live client, but with other people in a practice type of environment, whether that's under a skilled teacher's supervision or you have a circle of who you practice with, so that you can refine your accuracy and learn how you're working, so that you develop a level of complete trust in what you're doing. So practice, 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 just like with any skill. I feel like you get better and you evolve and you refine your skill set through practice and development. That's why we call it development, is because you're developing your skill through that process. For me, that development came a lot through my own learning to trust in my day-to-day life, but a lot of it was through the training that I did, because I was practicing. And a lot of people are afraid of getting things wrong. I certainly was. You don't want to be bad in
Performance
front of your
anxiety, for
peers,
sure.
right? You don't want to do a
Yeah.
bad job. You don't want to get a no. Oh my God, I got a no. But it's through the no's that we learn either to trust. No, I know I'm right with this. I'm going to be confident with what I have, or to go, okay, just saying no. Did I get something wrong with the way that I interpreted the information? Because often what we have is correct, but we're processing it through our brain and then we're speaking it out loud, and we can mistranslate or miscommunicate something. Sometimes our recipient of that information can also hear it differently than the way that we're saying it. So then we can also get a no through that. So that's when it's practice, practice, practice of learning how to communicate this ability is really going to help people with their development. Connecting to your spiritual self, learning how to trust things. I think Reiki is a great foundation, because you're learning how to trust that this energy, this unseen energy, is flowing through you and doing something for the person. A lot of people in the Reiki level 1, they're like, oh, is this working?
How do I know I'm not
I'm
making
gonna
it up?
focus really, really hard,
Yeah.
and like maybe it'll work if I give it all of my might. And they don't realize that they're interfering with the process by actually infusing their energy into it by trying to force it, And it's the same with intuition. The more you just trust, okay, I know that I have this intuitive ability and I'm going to let the energy of this experience flow through me, it's much easier to start to work. You're working with the energy instead of trying to force it or control the way that it's coming through you. So that's really helpful for anybody who's developing is get out of your own way, relax. It's okay if you get something wrong. You learn more from a no than you do if you just get a yes, 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 yes. You're not going to develop unless you have a little bit of challenge or adversity, just like anything else in life. You learn from the struggles. You also need enough feedback of yeses to build your confidence too. So you do want to get in the habit of getting things accurately and correctly. But that's something that I recommend, a development circle where you're practicing with friends or preferably under the supervision of a skilled teacher. In my classes, what I teach different levels of things. So I teach beginner kind of intermediate psychic and mediumistic development, where we're practicing a lot of different kinds of exercises to stretch. It's like the muscles of our intuition. And sometimes like, I didn't know, oh, I could do that. I didn't know until I did an exercise. And then suddenly I was like, wow, I could do that. And that can have a really positive effect on your Reiki, because when you're connecting in some way, you never know how it's going to come in differently, like when you're doing a healing session. So one of the techniques that I did in a mediumship development class was to go through somebody's timeline. Okay, age 7, what does it feel like? Age 14, what does it feel like? Age 21. Suddenly I was doing this timeline healing, and it just naturally came in because I was able to tune into all these different ages and have this experience with the person in that age. So you never know how the exercise is going to affect you. Sometimes people think, oh, I didn't do very well on that, I'm not going to do that. But it's going to help you in some way just by having the experience of having done it. The more we pay attention to things around us, our intuition can help us. Like if you want to get better at getting names, read through a baby name book. If you want to get better at, health stuff, read through health manuals, health books, learn about the body, because all those words will then be in your subconscious mind and be able to come forward when you're actually having an experience of giving a reading or a healing to somebody. So that's how a lot of that stuff has evolved and worked for me, is because my own passions and interests are highlighted through my intuition. And that goes for anybody. Things that about will be able to come forward in your intuition more easily. You have access to that. You still have access to the other things, but it's just like, wow, I can totally be in this experience with this because I know all about it and it's super familiar, and I'm just on a roll with that kind of evidence or information. And I also feel like in my classes, it's important to be both pushing my students and compassionate at the same time, because I've definitely had some teachers in my training process that were a little bit too mean, and that could break the confidence of somebody. So I want to push people out of their comfort zone, because sometimes we need a nudge in that direction. And also I like to be supportive of my students. So I do beginner, intermediate, advanced levels of classes with those things. I also do like workshops or seminars on how to read the chakras in the auric field, or how to do maybe something else more specifically. And then I have a mentorship that I teach specifically to people who are Reiki master or higher, who are able to then start learning additional tools. So they're using their intuition to then go deeper into their sessions, because there's only so much we can teach in just the development circles or just the Reiki classes. So I've decided to combine those and do a mentorship on that. And then I've also been asked to do a mentorship on people who want to be a professional, like psychic or medium, on how to help them through that process too. So that might be coming in the future. So I have rolling classes with that. Like I have either 4 or 12 week programs of weekly classes. so that people can get better at their skill set, because it's a continuation, a consistency that happens, and you definitely grow more when you're being consistent with the process of development. And you can find out about those classes on healingwithjules.com, and they're always up and available throughout the year. And I usually take some of the summer months off and December off, but otherwise there's usually classes scheduled of all of those varying things that are happening for the development circles.
Well, and you also teach Reiki 1 and 2, Reiki Master, and Karuna Reiki Master, and Animal Reiki 1 and 2, and Animal Reiki Master too,
Yeah.
right?
And crystal healing. And
Crystal healing. I know, I was thinking, oh, we didn't even talk about the crystals.
Yeah.
another class, another time.
Podcast.
But yeah,
Another episode.
Yeah. Crystal healing. And I'll probably start doing more sound healing stuff. Right now, I just have that as an integrative thing in my mentorship, where I'm teaching them how to integrate Reiki crystals and sound together in a session, because that's something that I really love and do in all of my in-person sessions. I use Reiki crystals and sound healing together. So yeah, I'm a busy lady. There's a lot of stuff.
And you do private sessions also,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, I do readings and healing sessions as well, both online and in person. So there's a lot going on in my world, which is fun. And I think I like it better that way, because I'm such a multitasker. It's
Yeah.
like more fun for me to do a whole bunch of different things at once than to just do the same thing over and over and over again. So I love it.
Well, I love that you even say that, because I have recently really understood how many people that have that personality style that feel like if they do any of this kind of work, they have to just focus on one thing. And it's like, but what about that over there? What about, oh, and I'm interested in that. And, obviously you want to develop skill in areas that you need to be skilled, but also just allowing that curiosity and exploration. And then I think, as you're talking about interest, as you're talking about sensitivity, I think many of us have sensitivity. And then if we combine it with interest, are we interested in the subject? And, it compels you to find the teachers like yourself. So I'm going to say your website again, which is Healing with Jules, Jules, so healingwithjules.com.
Yeah.
So everyone can find you there. And it has been just absolutely wonderful to talk with you. And just as we said beforehand, like, because we didn't really have an outline or a topic. Well, we never have an outline, but you know what I mean? We didn't really have a specific topic. We just knew we'd have lots to talk about. So thank you so much for joining us. And for everyone listening, again, this is Jules Davis. She is in Redondo Beach, California, and her website is healingwithjules.com, and different Instagram, TikTok, at Medium Jules. So thank you so much. Robyn and I are ReikiLifestyle.com. All of our different information is there. And same with YouTube, podcasting, everything's ReikiLifestyle.com.
Well, mine's actually Robyn Benelli Reiki.
Oh, Robyn Benelli Reiki.
Yeah, on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So we're going to go ahead and open the circle, and we say thank you to you, Jules, and thank you to all of you that are listening. And I hope it was as fun for you as it was for us, because I love the idea of the different styles of mediumship. Certainly in the training I've had, there's definitely different styles of it. And so it's good for people to have an understanding of that.
Right.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Jules.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.